Okay, so we're at Ayin Aleph on the Aleph near the very bottom. Last week concluded the sugya of how Rav interprets Ger Tosha for Omer Linyan Ribis Ma'id, and the Gemara explained that there was a chilik. Really, what it boiled down to is that with a Ger Tosha, you can collect ribis because of the juxtaposition of itam and ito, that the lashon of ribis applies to ito, meaning to a Jew, and not itam to a ger toshav who's just five in the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. And so that's how we concluded that sugya. So basically, as I said, over the last few weeks, the Gemara is looking at just certain small sugyas, vignettes really, of the Inyan of ribis, so that we're trying to see how different circumstances give rise and respond to the question of ribis. So now the Gemara here, very bottom of Ayin Aleph, is going to address the question of how we look at ribis when the loan involves a Jew and a non-Jew. I mean, in the general sense, of course, we just learned in the Mishnah that you can lend to a Jew and borrow from a Jew. Malveh Yisrael Mosav Shel Akum, and that you're allowed, but this is Midas Akum of Lo Midas Yisrael. And what does that mean? That you can lend with the knowledge of an Akum, but not with the knowledge of Yisrael. So now the Gemara is going to unpack that a little bit and give us a little bit more understanding of, generally speaking, how that works. I mean, on a surface level, we know you borrow from a non-Jew or you lend to a non-Jew, you can freely collect or receive ribis. There's no question. Well, interest. There's no question of ribis. There's no halacha of ribis. But then there are subtleties to this, which again now the Gemara wants to get into a little bit more detail. Okay, so we'll start by saying Tana Rabbanon, very bottom line of Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph. Al tikach meito neshet v'tarbis. And again, we go back to that same pasuk. You shouldn't take meito neshet v'tarbis. And meito, now we explain to meaning another Jew, not a ger toshav. But anyway, so you shouldn't take from him ribis. Now, how about throw this in? What about if you're a guarantor in a case? How does the guarantor, the Orev, fit in? Again, we're going to see the Mishnah, we have a Beferish Mishnah, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Aval ata nasa lo Orev. But you can become an Orev in a situation where there is a non-Jewish participant. He's a lender, and you can become an Orev even though you shouldn't take ribis from a Jew, but you can with being an Orev. But again, just very on the surface, we can't really discuss it because we have to understand what the circumstance is. Why is an Orev better than the borrower or the lender? He's one of the four people in the transaction who's considered to be over on ribis, right? So what good is it to be an Orev in this particular situation? Okay, all right. So now on the
Why would we think,
sorry,
excuse me, Rabbi, why would we think that a guarantor suddenly is brought into the same issue of ribis? He's not doing anything. He's just guaranteeing something, and he goes
yeah.
about his life.
Well, think about it, Jay. If I lend you money for ribis, and we're two Jews, that's completely awesome.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, David says, you know what, I'm going to guarantee this loan. I'm going to make sure that the loan, that you, Jay, are going to repay the loan, and I'm going to be there for you. Well, stop and think a minute. You can't make the payment. Yeah, but I'm lending to you I'm lending it to you on, if I don't lend to you on ribis, no problem. But if I lend it to you on ribis, then is the Orev who will take over the loan if you don't pay. Is
Right.
he over on Ribis?
He would
Because
be over
you're
on Rivers,
No, but I think there's another problem.
but if it ever happened, it may not even happen.
No, but here's the thing. That loan, think about somebody co-signing on a loan. Somebody's a young person, no credit history, so when their parents co-signs on the loan, I think that's what I think of as an RF. So the loan simply will not exist. Now, it's normally a loan just needs a borrower and a lender. But when there's a guarantor involved, it's because the loan simply wouldn't happen without that. So that person is an enabler. It's almost like, though I'm sure it's not, well, I'm not sure, but I suspect it's not Lifnei Iver, but it's sort of a similar idea. Without the Arev, presumably this loan wouldn't happen. If the loan wouldn't happen, there wouldn't be any ribis.
So,
So therefore, he's a participant in enabling the ribis.
okay, I understand that, but the question is, which side is the Gemara looking at this? From the lender viewpoint, he knows it's going to be paid back. But from the borrower side, he has a good friend who gives a guarantee, and this is just theoretical. And until the loan is not being paid, and he can't make the payments or whatever, nothing really happens. So there's no ribis actually taking place until some money starts moving.
right. As a reality, that's true. The Gemara's question is not yet in the reality, but asking, how does an Orev, a guarantor, fit into this picture of Ribis if there were to be exercised the question of Ribis?
Right.
Is he included in that parsha? So you're right. There isn't any Ribis right now. Nothing's actually happened.
Nothing's happening. I
Nothing
mean,
happened right now. That's correct.
and so therefore, you can't say there's an Avera right now.
Well,
Ribis
so,
hasn't been paid.
okay. So let's hold off a second. So the Gemara
Okay.
says on the top of Ayin Aleph Amid Beis, Orev Laman. Let's analyze this. What is the role of an Orev? You just asked that, or you indicated that, Jay, in your question. Who is an Orev? Where does he fit into this? Who is he a guarantor for? The lender or the borrower? Orev Laman. So let's just say the lender was a Jewish fellow, right? He's a Jewish fellow, and he lends on interest. Okay.
To be paid later.
What's that?
To be paid later.
Okay. So here the Gemara is going to sort of give different possibilities.
Yeah.
Let's say you had a non-Jewish lender, who is lending to a Jewish borrower.
Citizens Bank.
And we know that's not ribis because the Jewish borrower is allowed to pay interest to a non-Jewish lender. But now a Jewish Orev, a Jew steps in, and he's going to become the guarantor to this loan between a non-Jewish lender and a Jewish borrower. Frek the Gemara, Orev Laman. To whom is he the guarantor? To the Jewish lender, to the non-Jewish lender, or to the Jewish borrower? That's now the issue, because we have a Jew and a non-Jew. Whose side is he on as to whether or not you can point a finger and say he violates ribis? Elema. So let's go through this. Elema Orev Yisrael. If you will say that he is the guarantor, the Orev, that he's an Orev to a lender who is a Jew. We're talking about a situation where the lender is a non-Jew. But if you say that the whole principle of an Orev is that you can become an Orev to a Jewish lender, v'hotana, we learned in the Mishnah, right? And the Mishnah is a little bit later on. We learned in the Mishnah, Elu, and we mentioned this in the past, Elu over and below Sase, that in a transaction involving ribis, these are the participants who are over and avera. A malveh, haloiver, ha'arev, ha'edim. Remember we said this in the very beginning, that the four players in a loan, the lender,
Yeah.
the borrower, the guarantor, and the witnesses, all have a chelik in the avera of participating in a illegal act of ribbis. And they're all punished equally, even though the Edom are just Edom, they're not doing anything, but they participated. Without them, there would not have been a loan, so they were enablers to the loan, and therefore they are over on the issur of ribbis. So, if you're going to tell me that the Orev is an Orev to the Jewish lender. If he's an Orev to the Jewish lender, he's put himself squarely in the middle of a ribbis issue. Because of that, the halacha is that he can't be an Orev in a case where a Jewish lender lends on ribbis. Can't do it. Ella, says the Gemara. So now when we ask the question, who is he the Orev to? Ella lenachri. So the Gemara is telling us that it has to be a case, he's a guarantor for a non-Jewish lender.
Right.
When a non-Jewish lender, it collects interest, there's no issur ribbis, you can become an Orev. Witnesses can be witnesses. So the Gemara wants us to sort of figure out when it says that an Orev, the Brisa said, what did the Brisa say? The Brisa said, Tana Rabbanan, that you can't take Neshek from Tarbis, but you can become an Orev. So now we have to, that's why we're doubling down here. What does it mean to become an Orev in what situation? So clearly we've identified that you can't be an Orev when you have a Jewish lender who is initiating a loan on ribbis, then the Orev can't be a participant. There's no way around it. So therefore the Gemara concludes, Elul Nachri, that it has to be that the lender is a non-Jew, the borrower is a Jew, you're an Orev, and you're an Orev in the case where the Jew will owe interest to the non-Jewish lender, and you'll pay it. So what?
So from the non-Jewish lender,
Yeah,
or from he says, "Look, I'm covered because
right,
either the one who borrowed is going to pay me, or the guarantor will pay me." So
right.
he's happy and goes his way.
But the Orev, in the worst comes to worst circumstance, is going to pay interest to a non-Jewish
Right.
fellow. So
Which
what
is-
does he have to lose? This is no issur. So that's how we've established that's what it has to be, because this way there won't be an issur. Correct? The Gemara
Whatever.
says the kivan, the dina, the nachri, since the dinim of a nachri, of a non-Jew apply. When you have a Jewish lender, he's going to apply his principles, the principles of a non-Jew, right? Now? So this is a chiddush. This is what we're going to learn now. What are the principles? What's the difference between a loan from a non-Jew to the loan of a Jew vis-a-vis the Orev? Says the Gemara that when a non-Jewish lender lends, and there is an Orev, there is a guarantor, the Ozl Bosa Arva. He doesn't have to go to the borrower, and the borrower will tell him, sorry, I can't pay you, go to the guarantor. Under the laws of the Nachri, he can go directly to the Orev and say to the Orev, who he knows is good for it, and say, pay me. And then you go after the borrower and collect your money. It's like in Menashe's case, if the parents co-signed and the son can't pay, why waste my time going after the son? I'm going to go after the Orev. I'm going to go after where the low-hanging fruit, where the money is, and then tell them you go after the borrower who you guaranteed.
Right.
So the Gemara is telling us that's the way a Nachri operates. That the Nachri operates the Ozl Bosa Arva, that you go directly to the Orev, and the Orev has to pay the whole thing, and then go after the other fellow. So
So the
let's stop
Nachri
there.
doesn't Nachri doesn't have any Rachmanis.
No, no, right.
No,
So
it's black and white.
black and white, black and white. So let's think a minute. I lend you $100, and you're going to pay me 110. But you don't have the wherewithal. So David's going to be your guarantor. David has the ability to say, fine, I can write a check for 110, no problem. Now, you aren't able to make the loan. You aren't able to repay. So what I say, why do I waste time with you? I'm going to go to David, and David will make the payment. What payment will he make me? He will make me 110.
Yeah.
The 100 for the loan and the 10 for the interest. And that, okay, according to that circumstance, that's okay, because the Orid is dealing with the non-Jewish lender. Says the Gemara, Ionina de Koshakal Mine Rebisa. So the Gemara says, why is that okay? Why is that okay that he can become an Orev to a non-Jewish lender? Once David makes that payment of 110 to me, he's going to come to you
for
and collect his money. Then one Jew is going to be collecting interest from another Jew because he paid 100 plus 10, and now he comes to you and says, "Give me 100 plus 10." So what have we solved here? We still have a circumstance where the Isser of Ribbis applies between the two Jews, to you and David. So the Gemara wants to say, oh, it's okay for an Orev to participate, and here's the circumstance. That doesn't help matters. Vis-a-vis the non-Jew, of course, it's not a problem. But vis-a-vis your fellow Jew who is the borrower, you still have an Isser of Ribbis. So, correct the Gemara, how do we reconcile that? How do we get around that? So that's a very good question, because that loan is out there with interest, and you owe the interest. So the Gemara has an interesting chap. Amar Rav Sheshis, that Rav Sheshis says, no, the case here, even though there is a non-Jewish lender and a Jewish borrower, the Jewish borrower prevailed upon him to loan under the Jewish law, not the law of the Nachri. The law of the Nachri is you can go right to the Orev and let the Orev worry about it. The laws of the Jew is, no, you go to the borrower, and if the borrower can't pay, then you go to the Orev. That's the halacha. The halacha is that when you have an Orev, you don't go to the Orev. The Orev is the last resort, not the first resort. You go to the borrower, try to get the money from him, and if he can't pay, then you go to the Orev. So Rav Sheshis says, Shekibel of Laden Bedina Yisrael, this non-Jewish lender agreed to lend under the halacha, under what is the Jewish law, right? And so what did he do here? So therefore, he would go not to the Orev, he would go to the borrower, and therefore there wouldn't be a case of ribbis between the Orev and the borrower.
But he hasn't solved the problem that the original borrower doesn't have the money.
Well, yes, but under halacha, it's a very, very last resort that you go to the Orev. So if you're struggling with the borrower, and the borrower says, "I'll pay you, give me another week, another 10 days," under the Jewish Nachri law, you'd say, "Forget about it. My dealings are with the Orev, not with you." On the Jewish law, that's not the case. So, yes, in a way, Jay, we're staving off what might be a problem later.
Yeah.
But since you're not dealing directly with the Orev, that the Gemara says that
it's a strange kind of chop here.
Right, but here I think is what the answer really is. The answer is that the borrower owes him 110, right? And that 10 would be ribis if it was a Jew, but it's not, it's a non-Jew. What we've established here is if the Orev winds up having to pay the lender, the non-Jewish lender, the 110, then the debt is 110. It's not 100 plus 10. The debt is 110. When the Orev then goes to the Lovet and says, you now owe me money, it's no longer a case of two Jews who are entering into a ribis situation, because the Orev comes to the Lovet and says, you owe me $110. It's flat, not 100 and then ribis of 10. So the fact that he paid the 110 changes the tenor of the loan, that it's no longer a ribis loan of 100 plus 10, it's $110. It's as if I lent you $110, not 100 plus 10. So the chap here is that if you go after the Jewish law, not the law of the Goy, that we avoid ribis, because even though the guarantor is going to wind up paying that money and coming to the Lovet to collect, he's no longer collecting ribis, he's collecting a debt of $110.
So they changed the definition of what the guarantor is guaranteeing.
That's right.
From the beginning.
That's what Rav Sheshes is saying is the chap here, is that if you go under Jewish law, you avoid ribis because you're going not to the guarantor, but you're going to the
for 100. You're going back for 110.
Right. So now when the Orev comes to the borrower and wants to collect, he's collecting a debt of $110. You owe me 110.
Well, the one who borrowed knows that he owes 110 from the beginning. The minute he borrows from a goy,
he knows it's 110. Except that we're not looking at it as 100 plus 10 in ribis.
Yeah.
We're looking at it as a loan of 110. The loan is 110. That's what Rav Sheshes wants to be mechadish by saying that if you go according to the laws of the Yid, of the Jew, and not the laws of the Goy, it changes the tenor of the loan, and the loan no longer becomes a ribis loan.
So something has to happen at the beginning where the guarantor agrees that if the lender can't pay, that he's going to pay the 110. Meanwhile, the guarantor normally, unless there's something maybe written down or something, the guarantor starts off by saying, I'll guarantee 100. But suddenly we're saying, no, you're guaranteeing 110.
You're guaranteeing 110.
Because the loan is not being specified correctly. So we changed the definition of what the loan was. The loan was for 110 to the bank.
And that's what Rav Sheshes is saying, that under the Jewish way of of the law of thing, that's the way you look at it. You look at it as a loan of 110. So when he has to go to collect, he's not collecting ribis of 10. He's collecting a loan of 110.
But everybody in the scene knows that was
it's $100 plus $10
interest here.
Right.
You can't forget. You can't have people won't forget it that it was a 10% interest.
Right. No, they won't forget it. But that's what Rav Sheshes is saying, that under the halacha, under Jewish law, the terminology changes, and it is no longer a ribis loan of 100 plus 10. It's just a straight out loan of 110. I can lend you 110. You pay me back 110. So you're right, but that's the way Allah interprets it. That's why Rav Sheshes says that the Goy was willing to Kibbul of Laden Bedina Yisrael. It's no difference to him. He's going to get his 110. The Goy is going to get his money. He doesn't have to worry about it. But if they prevailed upon him to say, do it under Jewish law, then Jewish law will ultimately save the deal for the Orev, that he won't be over on ribis, because he's collecting not a ribis loan, he's collecting a straight loan of 110.
So the guarantor has to agree up front that he's going to pay back in case there's default on the loan,
Yeah,
he knows that he owes 110, not
correct,
100.
correct. Yeah, that's without doubt. The 110 is without doubt. That's what he owes. The chap is, how do you couch that 110? Do you count it as 100 plus interest of 10, or do you count it as a loan of 110? So according to the Goyish law, it's 100 plus 10. According to the Jewish law, it's 110. So therefore, says the Gemara, there was no skin off his back for the goy to say, I'll agree to the Jewish way of doing business. I'm going to get my 110. It doesn't matter to me if I follow this law or that law. Bottom line, am I getting 110? That's all I care about. So that's what Rav Shesha says, is that was the difference at the time. So they prevailed upon the goy to say, lend us the money. We're good for it. We have an RA, and you'll get your 110.
But if somebody who says, if the guarantor says, look, I want something in writing to the
Yes,
borrower that says what I'm guaranteeing is 110,
that's correct.
not 100.
110.
So if the
But
Jewish
he says it in
lender,
writing. He says it in writing. I'm guaranteeing you 110.
yeah, well, yeah, something has to be documented. Otherwise,
No.
this is
No, of course. We're talking about a very legitimate loan with a borrower and a lender, and it's
no, the
documented.
guarantor has to agree up front that it's
But there's also two witnesses who are there who are attesting to the terms of the loan, and they will say, yeah, the terms of the loan are that the lender is lending 100 and getting back 110. There's no question about that. But how do you get to the 110? That is the chilik between the laws of an Achri and the laws of our laws of a Jew. So in order for the Oreg to be able to become an Oreg, says Rav Sheshes, the loan has to be under Jewish law, because the Jewish law has that little mechanism that will allow the interest to become part of the principal, so that when he has to pay him back, he's paying him back a principal of 110, no ribbis. That's all. And that should suffice. Anyway, so that's the answer to the question. How do you become an RA? L'chayra, if the goy is going to collect the money and the Jew has to go to the fellow Jew, he's going to collect interest. Answer is, under Jewish law, he doesn't collect interest. And since the goy is persuaded to make the loan under the laws of Dinei Yisrael, then we're good to go. We're good to go. We can make the deal. So that's what the Gemara comes to decide and tell us that is the thing. All right. Looks like everybody's good. We're going to go home, make the deal, no problem. Correct the Gemara. Wait a minute. It's not so simple.
doesn't sound kosher to me.
If the non-Jew agrees to be bound by Jewish law in the deal, how can he take interest? You're telling me that he is going to be bound by the Jewish law, not the Gentile law. The law of the Nachri doesn't know from interest. The law of the Jew knows from interest. If he is going to be bound by the Jewish law, meaning that the repayment will be one lump sum, not an interest plus, not a principal plus an interest, how do you get to interest in the first place? Jewish law doesn't allow interest. He's allowing himself to be judged or making a transaction under the laws of the Jewish laws. So now he's not a Jew, but he wants to be treated under the laws of the Jewish laws. The Jewish law says you can't take interest. So how do you to go and take interest when you're allowing yourself to be judged by Jewish law? So it's sort of plain on the surface, but you think about it. Okay, he acceded to the Jewish law, therefore the Arev can collect from the Loga. But wait a minute, you yourself, the Nachri, agreed to abide by Jewish law. Jewish law says there's no interest. How can you have initially charged 100 plus 10 when that goes against Jewish law? It's it's amazing because it's so simplistic that
So
on
the
the surface of it,
Nokri has a claim that the Jew is not operating properly.
right. Here, I want to help you guys by being part of it, by agreeing to Jewish law. Now you're telling me that I can't even charge interest, which I would under my law. So, but anyway, so the Gemara is trying to sort of parse this. Obviously, we're going to give an answer. But on the surface of it, it's a very plain question: is if he's going to agree to Jewish law, let him agree to Jewish law. Why is there rivers in the first place? It's kind of a throw in here.
1 second.
So the answer the Gemara says, Rav Sheshes, who was the author of this halacha, says, you know what? I'm going to make a pshara. I'm going to make a compromise. Shekibel of lazu, below kibel of lazu. All right, we get it. The guy had no reason to agree to Jewish law. He said, I'm making a loan under my laws, and that's the beginning and the end of it. So now that we got him to agree to make the laws to make the loan under Jewish law, don't push it and say that under Jewish law you can no longer take interest. Otherwise, he won't even get to first base. So Rav Sheshes therefore makes a split and said, Shekib b'lalav lazu, the goy accepted Jewish law for purposes of the overall transaction. B'lo b'lalav lazu, but he didn't take upon himself Jewish law with respect to the very essence of the deal, and that is interest. Interest I'm going to take. Okay, I don't care what law, Jewish law, non-Jewish law, I'm taking interest. You want me to go into Jewish law so that you guys can have a better outcome towards the end if something happens? I'm willing to help you. So that there's not going to be ribbis between the Orev and the Lova, which we see there wouldn't be under that circumstance.
So the guy changes the definition to his boss of the loan that he made to this Jewish guy with changing the number to 110.
Right.
So maybe I'm just thinking hypothetically, what would he be agreeing to? It might be that he's thinking in terms of, well, I'll make this loan and all, but if it comes to some dispute about it, I'm agreeing to go to a Beis Din instead of going to the secular courts. He might have reasons to prefer that. I might think that it'll be more fair, maybe. But he's not. Again, he's not agreeing to
No, he doesn't want
drop
to
the
lose
interest because that's fundamental.
That's right. He doesn't want to lose out on the prize. The prize is the $10. He said, I'll agree to what you guys want to help you, but I'm lending
Still getting
100.
like $10.
I'm lending 100 and I'm getting back 110.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. So Rav Sheshes says, you know what? I'll take a half a loaf. I'm agreeing to take a half a loaf. Interest, we're going to give him the $10. We're not going to call it interest, but we're going to give him the $10. So therefore, as between the Orev and the Loveh, there's no ribbis. And there's no ribbis vis-a-vis the goy because that doesn't apply. So everybody goes home happy. The loan is for 110, and the goy gets what he wants. And among the two Jews, the Orev and the Loveh, they squared away that if for some reason he has to collect, he's not collecting ribbis, which was the whole problem, is that there was going to be a ribbis issue. So you see the flexibility that Chazal had. Again, you could say, oh, it's kind of like a facade here. It's a sham. It's not a sham. Rav Sheshes is saying, look, in real life, we've got to deal with the goyim. We got to deal with them, and we have to borrow money from them and everything else. And you can't deceive them. They want interest. We've got to pay interest. Among us, we won't pay interest, but among the goyim, we'll have to pay interest. So this is a case where everybody sort of wins. But you make shalom that the goy will continue to lend because he'll continue to get his interest. And among the Jewish participants, there will not be an interest issue, which, again, from our standpoint, that's a more serious issue than the money itself. We'll pay the money, you just don't want to be over the law of ribbis. That's how a Jew operates. I mean, you'd rather, if he follows halacha, he says, okay, I got to pay interest, but I don't want to pay interest and be over a lot of ribbis. So anyway, it's an interesting twist of how we get around the question of Nasalo Orev, even though there's a mission that says that you can't be an Orev, but you can be an Orev under this circumstance. Okay, now let's go back and look at our Mishnah. What is the last part of the Mishnah? So the last part of the Mishnah, very interesting. Let's just read the Lashon because we're going to get over it here. So what does the Mishnah say? Malva Yisrael Ma'osav Shel Akum. A Jew may lend the money of an Akum, Midas Akum, Avlo Midas Yisrael. So we said at the time there were two different circumstances. In other words, the Akum lends the Jew $100. No problem, no ribbis. The Jew now, another Jew comes to him and says, before you pay back the money, I need that money, and I will pay interest on that money. I need to borrow that money. Don't repay it. Just give it to me. I'll repay it. So on the surface, is that okay or not? Because why? Who is lending the second Jew the money? The Akum or the Jew? If the Jew who borrowed the money is now, quote, relending, I mean, he's passing it on. He's relending to the other Yisrael and collecting ribbis, that's a violation. But if he's passing on the Goy's money, then he's absolved. That's what the Mishnah says. That Malva Yisrael also shall akum midas akum. He has to do it with the permission of the akum, so that the imprimatur of that loan is from the goy, not from him, the yid. That's the way it works. But if he doesn't do that and he says, "Sure, I'll make a deal with you," then he's over the lav of ribbis. That's how it comes out. So now let's look at the Gemara. Malva Yisrael Moshe shel Nachri. If the Jew lends the money, the non-Jew, the money from the non-Jew to another Jew, midas Nachri. If the Nachri knows about it, then the Mishnah says, okay. Tana Rabbanan. So now, there's a brisa here that's going to discuss this particular circumstance in greater detail. Malva Yisrael Ma'osav shel Nachri midas hanachri. The halacha is that one Jew who borrowed money from a non-Jew, no problem, can lend out that money to another Jew, midas nachri, as long as the nachri knows about it. Avalon midas Yisrael, but not with the das of Yisrael. So now, what's the circumstance? How did this come about? Ketzah. Yisrael shalavamos min nachri beribis. The Jew borrowed money from the nachri with interest, no problem. Ubikesh lahachziram lo, and he wants to return the money to the goy. The loan is over, 30 days. Mitzor Yisrael achav omalo, which I said before. So another Jew comes over and he hears that his friend is about to repay a loan to a goy, and he says to him, "Tinam li, give me that money, vani ala, and I'll pay the interest on your behalf." Right? B'derech she'ata malalo. In the same way that you would pay him, I will pay him, and I will be your substitute. Says the brisa osir, that is osir. You're not allowed to do that. Why? Because that becomes like we said, a transaction between two Jews, and the transaction between Jews, which involves ribbis, is also okay.
It's tainted money.
What's that?
It's tainted money because it has an interest clause in it.
Right, because all he's doing is he's picking up again, this is the fundamental difference of whether or not the Jew who is the original borrower is he, what's his role in this? Is he, and we'll see the Gemara will discuss it, is he an agent of the lender, or is he becoming a lender? So the question is, if he's an agent of the lender, he himself has no direct shaykhs to the loan, then you could say, fine, he's an agent of the lender. You're allowed to be an agent to a non-Jewish lender. You can make money from a non-Jewish lender by being a shaliach, by being an agent. But if he's being, quote, the lender, if he himself is being the lender, then it's quite the same as we had in the previous Gemara, where the Arev is going to become the substitute, and the Arev is going to be paying interest, and another Jew is going to pay interest to the Arev. then you can't do that. That's why these are fascinating cases, because in real life, when we deal in business, these are the things we have to be mindful of. It's one thing to say, I deal with a guy, I have no problem. But things become very complicated. Even when you deal with a guy and you deal with another Jew, what role does the Jew have? If he has enough of a role to make it seem like he is the balachrai, then you may have a ribbis issue without even realizing it, because wait, I'm dealing with a guy. What are you talking about? I owe the money to the guy. The terrorist says you may owe it, but in the interim, the Jew has broken the chain between the goy and the yid, and that becomes problematic. People don't think of it that way, but this is what the Gemara is telling us, that those are real life metzias where that can happen. So we had it in the case of an oref, and now we have it in the case of a substitute a borrower. Okay.
An agent. Yeah.
Hold on. So okay. So okay. So let's go back to here. Okay. So you saw okay. To normally vani ela kederach shatamalo osir. This is osir because it's directly a case of ribbis. Now, the imhem nidu etzel nachri. But if the first borrower who is about to repay comes to his lender, the goy, and he says, "Lender, I've got another borrower for you." In other words, you can make some money here. The memidu etzel nachri. If he comes to the nachri and he introduces the second borrower to the nachri, then mutter, then it's permitted. We said why? Because the new borrower is not dealing with the yid who was the first borrower. He's dealing with the nachri, the goy, who was the actual lender. So he is no longer a conduit between the lender and the new borrower. He's an agent. It's called an agent. An agent doesn't have any real achrayas here. A conduit is one thing. An agent can't be achrayah for ribbis. So therefore, that's okay. That circumstance is okay. Okay. Now, let's look at another case, which is similar but not quite the same. B'chein, Nachri shelava mos misrael b'ribis. Let's flip the switch. A Nachri borrows money from a Yisrael with ribis, right? No problem. Ubikesh lachzirim lo, and then the goy wanted to return the money to the yid, which is not a problem. Mitzor Yisrael acher v'amalo. Another Jew saw the goy and he said, "My friend John, don't return the money to the lender. Give it to me. I'll return it to the lender." Okay. So Tanam Li, he says, "Give it to me, and I will return the money. Just like you would have repaid the loan right now, give it to me in 30 days, I'll repay it." Then mutter. This is permitted, right? So what's permitted? It's permitted
What's
to
the
make
big
this
chiddush
deal.
here?
Why is it permitted? Because it's a deal between a Yisrael and an Akum, between a Jew and a non-Jew. The Jewish lender wasn't part of this deal. It was the original borrower, a Nachri, and a new borrower, a Jew, are making a transaction. That's no problem. They can transact all day long without having a problem. They didn't involve the lender who was a Jew. So by not involving the lender, they can make this deal. That's why the Brisa says mutter, right? But in Hemidu Eitel Yisrael, but if the non-Jewish borrower went to the Yisrael, to the lender, and said, "Listen, I got another borrower for you, and he's going to pay you. I want to give it to Yitzchak here," then usher, because then it becomes a loan from the lender to Yitzchak, and now you have ribis. So the flip side of the same set of circumstance, when you're dealing with on the borrower side,
Borrowing, yeah.
it's the same thing. In other words, what's the point? You have to create a firewall between the Jew and the non-Jew, So that in the case where there is a potential for ribbis, the Jew should never be in touch with the non-Jew. In other words, make your deal between yourselves. Don't ask me. And people will say, "Oh, I don't want to do it. I want to make sure that my lender is okay with it. Otherwise, it won't look nice." Yeah, but then you're opening a can of worms because if you go back to the lender and the lender is a Jew and you say and the non-Jew says, I can make you some more money. Hey, I'll give it to Yitzchak and he'll repay you. And the Jewish lender says, okay, that's ribbis. We may not realize it, but that's ribbis because he has just dealt between one Jew and another Jew, and the goy has bowed out in between. So that is when the Mishnah says that's what the Mishnah means when it says the lashon. When the Mishnah says the lashon, hold on. Malva Yisrael Mosef Shel Akum B'das Akum Avalo Midas Yisrael. That as long as the transaction, either borrow or lender, doesn't matter, is only Midas Akum, and the Akum is the conduit, then he breaks up the deal and there's no ribbis with an Akum. But once the Akum sort of becomes transparent and gets the Jew involved, the borrower or the lender, of a Lomidas Israel, because that opens up the possibility or the likelihood that now, if he collects the money from him, he'll be collecting ribbis. So that's a very interesting, again, real life circumstance. These, I'm sure they happen every day of the week, where people are in this circumstance where they borrow money from a non-Jew, and then another Jew wants to step in. I mean, I know of some circumstances where that would have happened, but you see it happening all the time. I mean, it's obvious that how careful you have to be not to be over the line. What, Jay?
But the original loan, when the Jew borrows from the goy, it's $110 he owes the goy, and if another Jew is borrowing it from the first Jew, he's borrowing 110.
No, but he's going to pay more money for the extra 30 days.
Well, he's paying
another $10 ribbis.
I'm just saying, but
let's say you're right. Let's say the first loan morphs into 110 instead of 100 plus 10.
We redefine it. It's $110 loan period, so that we get around the ribbis because we redefine the loan. Now, when you have the goy in this situation, the reverse, how can you make that reverse work?
No, but Jay, even if you say that the loan of 100 plus 10 becomes 110, let's just say
a new definition, right?
But now the Jew comes along and says, "Wait a minute, don't repay him 110.
Give me the money, the 110,
and I'll pay him 120. I'm going to pay extra ribbis for I'm not going to get a freebie for 30 days.
Yeah, but the guy that is only due 110, not 120.
Right, but the Jew is going to be repaying to the original Jew an extra $10 of ribbis. So there will be ribbis because of the extra time that the goy allowed the second.
So the goy is charging another $10 for the delay of the second Jew paying it back.
Right, but the goy steps out of the deal. The goy no longer is in the deal. Okay, so the new Jew, the second Jew, is taking over the deal, the loan from the Jewish lender, and he's going to be paying him 110 plus 10 ribbis.
Why should he pay him? I mean,
he's paying him for the extra time. The extra time isn't free.
Well, it's
a 30-day loan. Let's say it's a 30-day loan. But
it's still a deal between two Jews,
and that's why it's ribbis.
No, but the second Jew who borrows the 110 that the first Jew owes the goy, he's getting $110 loan, and he can't add another $10 to that because first of all, the bank only needs 110, not 120. And the first Jew who's doing
you're right because once the second Jew is dealing with the goy, there's no ribbis. You're 100% right. There is no ribbis when the second Jew deals with the non-Jewish lender.
But where did the extra $10 come become required between two
because
Jews?
he extended the loan from 30 to 60 days.
So the Jew is charging
Not the Jew,
second Jew.
not the Jew. The lender is charging.
Oh, so the
The
lender
lender is charging for the extra
expects
time.
another
Yes,
$10 from
from the
if
Jew
the
for the extra
loan
time.
pay so if the loan payback becomes delayed by another month, then the guy expects another $10.
Correct, and that's okay because that's not ribis.
Right.
But you can see these things happening all the time because in commerce, people
Yeah.
sell loans, people transfer loans. I mean, this is ma'aseh b'chol yom. This is not anything unusual where loans get transferred from one person to another. You would just have to be careful that when you're doing all of this, that you're doing it in a proper manner. Of course, again, you're right ahead to Iska. You do everything you can, but I got to believe that this is happening. That people are
But
not.
you have to go back for when you're doing the second deal,
Yeah.
there has to be something written down so the bank knows that there's somebody now going to pay him 120 because he lent it for another 30 days.
Yeah.
Then you have to have
No,
aiding
of
for
course,
that
no, of
also.
course it has to be in writing, and it has to be in writing, and it has to be
With
understood.
a second set of aiding?
Whereas all that written up initially that if in the end it goes past, I mean, that's the way you would do a loan nowadays. You would say, okay, here's the due date, but if it goes beyond, then it's X%, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. Still, something doesn't smell right to me. It's
Yeah,
just,
I don't like the term of saying that's not ribis. It is ribis. It's ribis to a goy, which is not prohibited.
yeah.
Yeah. Listen.
So the guy makes out here, he gets $20
Yeah, yeah,
because it was a
no. He
a
makes
month
out,
later.
but he's doing something for it. I mean, time
Yeah.
is money, so he extends the loan. He's nice enough to extend the loan, and he wants to get paid for the loan. I mean, that's. I don't think that that's improper. Because he's not taking advantage. He's just saying, look, I want my money back. You want to hold out for another 30 days? Let's renegotiate, and you'll pay me for time because that's how loans are made. Loans are based on time, and if you go over the time, then it's expected that you will pay more money or penalty or whatever it is
Yeah. Yeah.
for violating the time. So anyway, so we have two different circumstances here in this brisa, right? The brisa gave us two different circumstances, and it shows us how each of those cases can be an isser or not an isser. Okay. Then okay. So frek the Gemara. Okay, now that we see this price, we understand the terms. So the Gemara says as follows: Be shloima seifa. Be shloima this last part of the brisa that we just said now, where what was that? What was the case? Nachri shalava mos mi Yisrael beribis, where a non-Jew borrowed from a Jew, and it was another Jew who came in and wanted to take over the loan. Then we say if he's dealing with the goy, it's mutter, right? But if he's dealing with the Jew, it's awesome. Says the Gemara, Bishlam is say for that case, right? Why do we say it's usher if he deals with the Jew directly? Why? L'chumra, because the brisa is l'chumra, right? Why? Because we are machmir that what role does the non-Jew play? Right? I mentioned it before in passing. The non-Jew is really only an agent. He's a shaliach, right? He's not a participant in the loan. So we say, you know what? That's the role that the non-Jew, the Nachri, has to play, that he has to be strictly an agent, and therefore, if he's an agent, the deal is between one Jew and another, and it's also, in other words, that firewall that we were talking about when a goy is involved is not involved here. when he takes on the mantle of shlichus, because he has nothing to do with it. He's just introducing one Jew to another. You guys make a deal. I'm not part of this. I'm walking away. Okay, fine.
I think his video froze.
So says the Gemara, Bishlam the say awesome. Eloration in the
Keep
first
freezing,
part
Rabbi.
of the brisa, from one when the second borrower was a Jew.
I'm not sure what happened.
Well, he's frozen.
Introduced to the wait a minute. There's no such thing as shlichus by an achri. In other words, shlichus doesn't apply to a non-Jew. So
Rabbi,
the
your voice and video is breaking up.
Yeah, you keep freezing, and even the audio is choppy.
You might have to move the computer around a little bit.
Oh, okay. So he's saying, but okay, yeah.
No, still having problems.
So that in the ratio, the question is, why do we allow?
Disconnected. We'll see if he comes back soon, and if does, great, and if not, call it a day.
There he is. The audio is muted.
Better?
Now you're back.
Much better.
Okay, so I don't know what I did wrong, but I rebooted it. So okay, fine. So
we missed the last minute or so.
okay, so let's go back. So we gave two different circumstances of how this case works. One where the Nachri is going to be the lender, and the other where the Nachri is the borrower. So in the second case, where we say that where the Nachri is the borrower and he wants to repay the loan to the Jewish lender, and then the second Jew comes and wants to take over the loan. So we say that that if he just takes over the loan from him, then it's a deal between a goy and a yid, and you're allowed to do it. But if he goes back to the original lender and he says, I have a borrower for you who happens to be a Jew, and he says, fine, I'm okay, then you can't do it. Why? Because it's between two Jews. So the Gemara says, so the kasha is, Bishleim Seifa, this circumstance that we just talked about. I understand why we say it's osir if you go directly lechumra, because why? That out of the chumra, because the non-Jew becomes the agent of the lender. Therefore, we say it's osir because his agency may not be 100%, right? Because we have this principle of ein shaliach l'nachri. So if he becomes the agent of the lender to bring another borrower, that doesn't work. So we're machmir, and we say you can't do it. But the reisha, where we say that when a one Jewish borrower takes over from another Jewish borrower to a non-Jewish lender,
Oh, yeah.
we say that it's okay. Why? Given the ain't shlichus l'nachri, since there's no shlichus to nachri, iu nia de koshakl minera visa, then it's as if one Jewish borrower is taking ribbis from another Jewish borrower. Why is that okay? In other words, if the principle is that there's ain't shliach l'nachri, so in the first case we're machmir and we say therefore it's usher because you can't do it. Then why in the second case do we say mutter that you're allowed to do it because you're
Starting to have problems again.
with a non-Jewish lender? The two borrowers are Jewish. Each other. In which case it's forgiveness.
Having
So
problems
the
again.
Gemara is troubled here in the Sefer. What principle are you using to add one or and another case be mutter? So we're saying why? Because there's a Gentile.
Is he in Florida?
Well, I'm not sure where he is, but
Yeah.
he's not here because I recognize the background's different.
Yeah. Good morning, Tzvi. I see your thing is up, but your name is coming up in a black box.
Yeah, because he doesn't have video on, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Or he
Okay.
has video. Oh no, he does have video on, but it's not. The cameras must be not working. But in any case, waiting for Rabbi. See if he comes back. One more chance here.
Where's David? David?
Yeah, I don't know where David is. I think did I see him in shul yesterday? Well, David Hornstead left. He usually leaves right around 11.
Oh, I think he has another shiur to go.
Yeah. David Giray. I'm trying to remember. Did I see him on Shabbos? I don't remember seeing him.
I think he may have been in shul because he asked me if I was in shul.
Oh.
So maybe so when you get a question like that, is the question, oh, here comes the rabbi again. He rebooted. Maybe it's got a battery or something.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening. Am I back, right?
Yeah, you're
You're
back.
back now. Yeah, but we missed.
Yeah,
I'll go over it again, but I'm not sure what's happening, why I'm bouncing back and forth. Okay. So
there it goes again.
The Gemara's kasha is as follows. Okay, the Gemara's kasha is as follows. You just gave me two different scenarios where we have a goy and two Jews, and we're trying to figure out how we can make the transaction, the loan from a goy to a Jew to another Jew, the chayrus ribis. So we're finding ways to say that if it is not with the knowledge of the Jew that this new loan is being transacted, then the goy sort of acts as a firewall, and he's the one making the loan, and therefore, even though the Jew is repaying it to the other Jew, there's no ribis because they didn't transact together. So it's kind of saying that, as long as the two Jews aren't making a new deal involving ribis, it's okay. So the Gemara asks a kasha. If that's the case, then why is that not uniform between the Reisha and the Sefer? The Reisha and the Sefer, remember, we have two parts to this Gemara. The first part, we said, the first part was...
It was permitted because it was
right, that the Yisrael lent Mal Yisrael Ma'osav Shalachri Midas Nachri, that the Nachri, in other words, the Nachri was the lender. The Jew borrowed the money, wanted to repay it, and then another Jew came across and said, "Give it to me, and I will repay it." Just it's usher because it's a deal between two Jews involving ribbis, but it may mediate till nachri. But if the first borrower came to the lender to the nachri and said, how about if I just extend and give this money on your behalf, to the second Jew? Then the Gemara says, mutter. Why? Because the deal is between the goy, and that was okay. Then we had the second case where we flipped it around and we said the lender was not a Nachri, the lender was a Jew.
Do a Nachri.
Nachri Shalava Mos Mizor, and he borrowed from a Jew, and he wanted to return it, and the Nachri had a Jewish friend, and the Jewish friend came to him and said, borrow the money, and I will make the repayment. So we're saying if the deal, so to speak, is between the Nachri borrower and the Jewish borrower, then there's no ribbis. But if the lender, then so frek the Gemara, that doesn't make sense. For the second case where you had a Jewish lender and a non-Jewish borrower, okay, then we say, why is it usher? Because we go to Chumrah. What do we mean to go to Chumrah? That the non-Jewish borrower becomes the agent of the Jewish lender for the loan, and we're machmir, and we say we don't allow that because again, a shlichus l'nachri, so we don't allow him to become the shliach. It's as if one Jew is dealing with another Jew. Elaresha, but in the first case, in the case where the lender was a non-Jew, given a shlichus l'nachri, if you're going to take the ear near the koshakim minei revisa, then the first borrower, who is a yid, is taking interest directly from the second borrower. We're allowing it, and in the second case, it's usher. The same principles apply to both. It shouldn't make a difference if the Nachri was the lender or the borrower. If actually the Nachri, then basically what we're saying is that firewall no longer exists. Does it matter if the firewall is because of the lender or the firewall exists because of the borrower? Once there's no firewall, meaning that the goy can't intervene between the two parties, the two Jews have to interact. And if they have to interact, there's always ribbis. There's always going to be ribbis when two Jews interact. The only difference is if you insert a goy in the middle, and therefore there isn't ribbis because the goy breaks the sort of the chain of ribbis. That's the principle. That's the principle. But if it applies to one, it should apply to the other. What difference is it if the lender is a Jew or the lender is a goy? In either case, we're saying if the Jew is not a shliach, then the two yidden are dealing with each other. Inevitably, a Jewish lender and a Jewish borrower, or two Jewish borrowers, they are dealing directly. And once you deal directly, it's always ribbis. Correct the Gemara, how can you make a distinction and say one is okay, one is not okay? It doesn't matter. Once he can't be an agent. And he can't be an agent between two Jews. He can't. Halacha. So if he can't become an agent, then the two Jews have to be working together. That doesn't work. Once the two Jews are working together, it's a problem because then you have ribbis. And it doesn't matter if the ribbis is between a lender and a borrower or two borrowers. The two borrowers become a lender and a borrower by definition, right? Because we're saying the one is going to take over the loan from the other. So it's if one is lending the other. Yeah, go ahead.
No, your video and sound is breaking up, and it depends a little bit on your body movement. Yeah. So you might be in a weaker signal area.
Fine. Okay. All right. But do we understand the concept here? I mean, concept. And shlichus la'akum, there is no shlichus. Not hearing me?
No, it's
hearing me?
Yeah, now we can hear. It keeps fading in and out. Might be time to wrap it up for the day.
Okay. let me sit in one position, not move around. Okay, ein shlichus la'akum. The akum can't become a shliach. What does that mean in reality? It means that he can't be a conduit to break up the momentum of ribbis between two Jews. Here we were saying that as long as the goy is in between, then you deal with the goy, not the other yid. There's no ribbis. There's no ribbis between a Jew and a non-Jew.
Right.
But if you're going to tell me that a shlichus la'akum, that a goy cannot be a conduit, a shliach, to transfer a loan, his loan, to a Jew, and therefore there should be no ribbis, then the whole rationale gets thrown out the window, and all we're left with is dealings between two Jews, a Jewish lender and a Jewish borrower, or two Jewish borrowers. Two Jewish borrowers is the same as a lender and a borrower because one is giving it to the other, right? So it's the same. So now, why is one mutter, one usser? That's the question on the brisa. Why are we more lenient in the case of a non-Jewish lender than we are in a Jewish lender? Why are we more lenient? We should say in both cases, it's the equivalent of two Jews transacting, and those two Jews can't transact because of ribbis. So this is a fundamental problem. In if we say in shlichus la'akum, it's a fundamental problem that in real life business, when Jews are dealing with each other, how do they deal to allow for ribbis? I mean, there's ways around it, but in other words, the whole principle was, oh, there's a non-Jew involved, and he's going to absorb the ribbis. And therefore, there won't be a question of ribbis between the two Jews because the goy is going to absorb the ribbis. But if we're saying in shlichus la'akum that the goy can't intervene, then how have we gained here? All right, so we'll end by saying as follows: Amar Rav Huna bar Manoach Mishrei Rav Osa Rei Rav Ika. All right, Rav Huna bar Manoach says the name of Rav Acha Bei Rav Ika. Hocha b'maya skinan. What's the circumstance? What are we dealing with? It's kind of like a symbolic event. So if the Nachri, who's a lender, says to the first borrower, take the money that I lent you, and hiniach ala karka, put it on the ground. Okay, once you put it on the ground, then your deal, our loan is over. So if that's the case, then we understand why in the ratio we're being less stringent, is because of this symbolic event where the goy, the lender, the non-Jewish lender, is saying to the yid, take the money that I lent you. If you put it on the ground, then you're no longer involved. In other words, symbolically, you're not a shaliach. You're not a conduit between your loan and the second loan to the other Jew. You're out of the picture. You're totally out of the picture because we've ended our deal. That's why when we've ended our deal, you're released. And you're released and there's no further obligation, right?
It's a very interesting
It
roundabout.
Yeah, it's a roundabout, right? Because what is the theory? The theory is that once he put the money on the ground, then the deal was over, so that the second loan is a loan between the non-Jewish lender and the Jewish borrower directly.
What
So
this makes me think of
thing.
is like putting something on the ground to make it hefker, except
yes,
it's
exactly
sort of like
point.
that.
Something
and yet
like
you're
that.
putting the conceptual loan to be hefker, and yet the money, of course, isn't.
No, but by making it hefker in theory, now when the non-Jewish lender wants to loan to the Jew, it's a brand new deal between a goy and a yid,
Right.
and
No, I get the point
the
of it,
point
but
of
it's
it.
just an odd way of doing it.
Right. But again, the Gemara finds these interesting ways of being able to interpret or reinterpret what is. And again,
They're working towards the answer,
Jay,
finding a way to get the
at the
answer.
end of the day, and I know Michael would be all over this. It's exigent circumstances. It's exigent circumstances. The Gemara has to find ways in order to allow for commerce to go on.
Go
Otherwise,
on, yeah.
it would stop in its tracks. And we know that that is a principle from the very beginning of the Gemara, is that the whole principle of halacha is not to stop lending between people. People should interact with each other and not be worried, oh, my money is going to be lost because halacha is going to prevent me from doing something. I think that's one of the main reasons why people are fearful is of getting into deals where halacha is involved, is because they're afraid that they're going to be, they're going to be short-circuited. Right, that is I know it's fact. That's a prevalent theory among Jews, is stay away from dealing with other Jews because somehow I'm going to get the short end of the stick. I'd rather deal with a goy.
What seems odd though is how somehow we're going through all these machinations, and in the end, the present day it's a heteriska, etc. And yet we also have on the a related thing we have with Shemitah, we have the Prose Bowl and so on. And it's kind of weird how on the one hand we say the halachas of money and is as important as the halachas of, let's say Basar B'Chalav and Shabbos, and yet we don't go about trying to figure out such loopholes, or at least not to such a degree on other things. It's kind of interesting.
Right.
Well, you have Shabbos, you have Groma, you have things that allow
to certain degrees we do have
continue happening and not stop dead in their tracks because of Shabbos.
True, and I guess when it comes to, I'm thinking of things we do for security and so on, there are certain, and medicine, of course.
And again, I think this also shows that the halachas are in a way more pragmatic when it comes to interactions between people in commerce, in dealing with each other, than on your own Dalet Amis. In other words, the Basar B'Chalav issue or anything. When you deal with the old Dalet Amis, that's one thing. But when you're dealing with someone else's Dalet Amis and you're saying someone else, you want to incur on someone else, then it's a whole different thing. There's a very interesting, and let me just finish by saying there's a very interesting Ramban on Shemitah that says that, the whole principle of Shemitah is having bitachon in the Rabbanu Shalom. That the Rabbanu Shalom knows what he's doing, what he's giving me as parnasa, and therefore I should allow myself not to violate the Shemitah and not to eat from the sixth, seventh, eighth year, and only, in other words, I'll get mine. Don't worry. Okay, that's what we understand the halacha to be. Says the Ramban, when it comes to your own matters, you have to have bitachon. You have to have extreme amunah and Rabbanu Shalom. But when it comes to someone else's matters, if someone else is in destitute, as in dire needs, and says, please help me, you are not allowed to say to him, have bitachon in the Rabbanu Shalom will help you. Forbidden to do that, says the Ramban. You have to help him. You got to give him money. You got to give him what he needs. You can't tell him, oh, just trust the Rabbanu Shalom. Rabbanu Shalom will take care of you. That works for you. It doesn't work for him. I saw that on
Are you saying it to him?
But you're saying it to him.
Right.
You've got to give him the money. You can't tell him, rely on the amunah. I have to rely on amunah. You have to, you have to be helped.
Yeah.
In the same vein, I would say that when it comes to matters having to do with Adam Chavero, we have to have a higher degree of sensitivity, that people have to interact with each other, and therefore there has to be an understanding and an agreement, an unwritten agreement of how we deal with each other. When it comes to my Dalet Amis and what I do, okay, that's between me and the Rabbanu Shalom. But like you said before, whether it's Isser and Heter or whatever it has to be, but you can't fool around when it comes to matters having to deal with Bidon L'Chavera. When I lend you money, oh, I'm a tzaddik, I don't have to pay you because it's ribbis, I'm not allowed to pay ribbis, blah, blah. No, 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 no such thing. You don't get away with that. So I think in a sense, that's what the Gemara is telling us, is that there has to be so that's why the symbolic thing of putting it on the ground, breaking the train of lending, which allows a non-Jewish lender now to make a new loan to the second Jew
Yeah.
and not be over in ribbis. Again, it's part of the same philosophy. We want to find a way to make this work. We don't want to say no. We want to say yes. So we're
Yeah.
going to come up with this rationale, and this is going to be yes. Again, for logic, it's fascinating. You can't. All right. So there's a lot more Gemara going on this, which we'll hold off for later. But so now we understand a little bit better on all these halachas of dealing with a non-Jew. First of all, we see how difficult it is, and we have to be very, very careful when we a non-Jewish participant, lender or borrower, and also how we have to treat our fellow Jewish, between Jews, is that you have to. Again, it seems like the only way to do business is know the halacha. Otherwise, that's why you go to a rabbi and says, "Can I do this? Is this okay? Am I allowed to do this, or am I violating the halacha?" Anyway, so Mitzvah Shem, we'll pick up next week. It's a fascinating discussion. We'll continue, but again, these are practical questions. The Gemara is 2,000 years old and is still asking practical questions on how we go about commerce. The fact that it was more rudimentary 2,000 years ago doesn't mean that it's easier today when we're sophisticated and everything is done sort of in a different sort of way. It doesn't make it easier. In many ways, it makes it harder, right, Jay?
Yeah, just faster. You go online, you borrow money, and you know the interest. I mean, it's all speeded up,
It's all
but
speeded
the
up.
foundation is still the same.
Exactly. All
Okay,
right. So
thank you,
Mitzvah Shem.
Rabbi.